process of each person's subjective. I will approach this with an interdisciplinary lens, but building the ideas from the field of psychoanalysis. As Jan told, it is worth noting that psychoanalysis is a theory taught in the universities from north to south in Brazil, where I am a psychology professor, and it is a lively and vibrant theory and practice used both in individual clinical practice and in public policy. Psychoanalysis is very useful on Brazil policies, public policies, to analyze complex social phenomena and also in the scientific research. We are very strong there in scientific research also. So psychoanalysis offers us a unique toolbox that allows us to understand precisely the things which determine our desires, our joy, our sadness, but without us knowing, perceiving, or controlling everything of these affects. But it appears on dreams, on slips of the tongue, and on psychological symptoms. Just as atoms are invisible, but can produce an atomic bomb with devastating effects, so can the unconscious mind. And here I bring you an example from my clinical practice. A patient came to me because he was suffering from psychological distress, an anguish he could not place. His biggest concern was that he has no memories of his childhood or of his home. He is a gay man who felt reduced to an object that was devalued by his sexual partners. He spoke of his difficulties in becoming emotionally involved and accepting his partner's love. His compulsive behavior with apps and sex bothered him. When I asked him why he was devalued himself so much with his partners, he recalled a memory from his adolescence. And here I need to explain to you that according to psychoanalysis, the unconscious is structured just like a language. Thus, words hide multiple meanings for the person themselves and also shape the narratives we live by, sometimes resulting in anguish and suffering. Therefore, we use the patient's all words to mobilize contents they have repressed or being repressed for the culture, for the political points of view, and to release the affects trapped in the meanings they have fixed for themselves. By effectively mobilizing this word, devalued, he assessed a repressed memory, a scene of his mother beating him when she saw him with another boy in the period of his adolescence. These memories emerged in a free association after this intervention with this word. And they never spoke about this. He cried a lot in this session and talked about how devalued by his mother he felt. He used the same word, as you can see, he had used to talk about his sex life, showing the weight this word carried for him. A session later, he also recalled another memory. He talked about his sexual initiation, but this time he gave it a new meaning, telling me for the first time that it had been violent and abusive. He repeated this dynamic throughout his adolescence, and to that day, and to that day. Here we can see the origin of his compulsive sexual symptom. He believed he had sexual relations freely in the way he wanted, but in reality, he was trapped in the belief that he had less value because of his sexuality. This is a very strong ideological, androcentric, and patriarchal construction in Brazil. We are really a patriarchal society. So he was fixed, he's identified himself with this political position, hegemonical and violent ideological position. And so when I pointed out this maneuver to him, his love life changed. He's working on this now. In sum, psychoanalysis can produce profound transformations, which is why it is a powerful theory. Applied to the analysis of the whiteness, it will show how this phenomenon, otherwise subliminal, invisible, and discussed in a reduced way as identitarianism or wokeism, can be denounced and understood of structuring our reality. So what is whiteness? Whiteness implies the act of transforming fair skin into a social and institutional value, which is hierarchical and shared, sustaining a network of distribution and maintenance of both material and symbolic privileges. And we can see that there are many dimensions or elements in this idea. The unconscious defense mechanism, a narcissism pact, an unspoken coding language, I will explain thereafter, an aesthetical of its own, more or less implicitly legitimizing arrangements in everyday life, a constructed network of access to social mobility, such as study and work, a juridical defense system, a hierarchical, moral, and normative system for guaranteeing privileges, rigid mechanisms for maintaining oligarchies that are presumed to be natural, and finally, an economic background essentialized as meritocratic and individualized. I will propose that whiteness can be extended to include the superior caste, the supposedly more perfect ethnicity, nationality, origin, or other exercises of hegemony, always of an accumulative economic nature beyond. For example, in Brazil, a woman can be selected for a job by explicit rules that include affirmative action quotas, being a Black and female and Latin woman. But when she passes through the company gate, she will continue to be ignored by the receptionist, despised by their colleagues, or never reach a high position despite their dedication or competence. Here we have the intersection of race and gender, about what Deborah will tell us a little more. And as you can see, in Brazil, we are 56% of Black people. But in the high positions, we are 92% of white men in the high positions in the enterprises, for example. Whiteness, therefore, is not to be confused with the fairness of the skin. It doesn't refer to white people simply or taken one by one. It implies a system of power which reproduces a racial hierarchy and attributes privileges or disadvantages depending on the color of the skin of your position in this hierarchy. It is both a constituent part and the structural effect of the colonization that came with modernity. But why speak about modernity? that took place 4 or 5 centuries ago. Race became an legitimizing element of the conquest of the Americas, occupying the symbolic place where blood and titles had previously justified hierarchies and the concentration of power, knowledge, and wealth. In an unprecedented operation of ecological devastation and pillage, without the possibility of restoration in our countries, in Latin America, the European world invented both the West and its center, as you can see by these two maps. As the master sits above the servants, this cartography make a kind of the same representation, the North and the South. No, keep in mind that North and South, it doesn't exist in the universal perspective or point of view, of course. The advance of the great navigations was catalyzed by Muslim expansion, which pushed Christian Europe to flee. But with the discovery of a new continent, America, before there was only 3, Asia, Africa, and Europe, a kind of a 3 partition. So it was necessary to represent America, this new world. New, although there was people that lives there for centuries with cultures and all of cosmology and epistemology for themselves. And paradoxically, we can say that in one side, in the North, it was the enlightenment, the rationality, and in the other side was the violence, the occupation, and this is the same word at all. Dussel calls that the colonial reverse. The same act that founded the reason on one continent is what advanced barbarism on another. Above, I'll explain all of this. Thus, a new cartography of power was installed, but it lacked an ideology to support it. Colonial rule was founded, and as well, we will see, renewed. I will tell you about psychoanalytical decolonized intervention. And the colonial rule was founded on the belief that even assumptions that only apply to a particular context could be taken as if they had global reach till our days, as long as they were enunciated from the supposed center that was invented. And this new epistemic, ontological, and ethical order justified the elimination not only of ideas, the origins, the original ideas of the people that lived in our territories, but also of people who did not have the same ontological status. In America, it's difficult to know our antecedents, how can I say that? Because sometimes we lost. We don't know even where we are from, even if we have an European descendants. So we can check from who we were our origin. And in that time, there was no room for diversity, since the New World challenged the logic of the Western European representation of humanity. Therefore, the entry of the American continent into the representation of the world divided the intellectuals of the time. For instance, 100-year-long debate unfolded across councils and papal bulls in the 16th century to determine the status of Amerindians. It was debated whether the native inhabitants of the southern hemisphere had alma nullius, if they have or no souls. The discussion was in this level, because if they have souls, they are human. So they are the property of the lands. This is the point beyond all of this discussion. So the notions of humanity, subhumanity, or non-humanity were thus part of the construction of race. Frantz Fanon wrote a lot about that. Makes some people killable to this day because they are not considered human. We have seen that in different parts of the world. The hierarchical scale of beings, according to their proximity to perfection, is part of a classical and Aristotelian model of the world, which was renewed by the scholasticism of St. Augustine. And it was established in modernity on the basis of two presuppositions: body-mind dualism and the idea that beings are classifiable units, therefore reducible to a system of equivalences. And why this? Why did this construction arise? What is the necessity of it? The construction of superiority or purity of the white race was an unprecedented narrative invented in modernity, giving birth to a new world system. And the coloniality of power is the organizing principle that structures all the multiple hierarchies of this world system. Rousseau says that the coloniality of power is extended to spheres of both public and private life. It involves controlling the economy, authority, nature and natural resources, gender and sexuality, subjectivity and knowledge. The idea of race, as you can see in this photo, it's not so good, but there's a white man in the first position and the black child and woman in the last position. The idea of race was proper roles for the colonial enterprise. Race, gender, and labor were the three main lines of classification that constituted the formation of modern colonial capitalism renewed, and the relations of exploitation, domination, and conflict are organized according to these dimensions, having the breed hierarchy or racial hierarchy as its basis. And what justifies an irrational practice of violence through the erasure of the colonial order. Modernity, therefore, is a kind of a myth, a Trojan horse that conceals coloniality. Importantly, those who create racial hierarchies and classify bodies and beings are not part of the classification systems. With the development of precise measurement instruments and a boom in mathematics and physics during the Enlightenment, European intellectuals started to approach knowledge production as a rigorous science, able to reveal the fundamental nature of things and starting from a supposedly neutral observation point. This is what Castro Gomes calls the 0-point hubris, crucially situating oneself at this 0 point means having the power to institute an entire vision of the world from one's perspective that became hegemonical. In any case, the new preferred method was empirical observation, which puts the observer directly in touch with reality. But this could only go so far. The past could not be empirically observed, thank you, observed. Since laws of nature were seen as permanent, the study of the development of human societies or the development of the child, as Erica was working since many years, could rest on the assumption that there was only one, in terms of societies, only one evolutionary pattern, what was called social Darwinism. Therefore, there was the idea of a temporal asymmetry according to which society was in a different stage of development on the same scale, from primitive, that are us, to enlightenment, that are the rational evaluation people. The same was true of different forms of knowledge. And because human capacities were thought to be universal, the only aspect of nature which could have allowed enlightenment to emerge in Europe, of all places, would have been white race. Thus, white Europeans were superior to all other races, and whiteness became the measure of knowledge beyond the measure of being. So we have the coloniality of power, the coloniality of being, the coloniality of knowledge, and the coloniality of gender. I will not talk about this because we will listen to Deborah. But I want to present you in this last part of my presentation a clinical intervention I was part of to show how whiteness takes form nowadays in a geopolitically and subjectively perspective at the same time. I think it might help you to think about how whiteness takes shape in England, in other countries or regions, such as Gaza. For example, yesterday I was in how can you say that, manifestation? And yes, and it was so good to see that we can think that the difference is not subalternity or inferiority, and all of us are human beings, of course. And I profit to present you, instead of the 4 figures at the beginning, in this art presentation, 4 women, intellectuals, women that in Brazil are doing such important thoughts about race, psychoanalysis, and differences. They are Cida Bento, the first one, Isildinha Nogueira, the second one, Neuza Santos, the third one, and finally Lélia Gonzalez. As you saw in the small fragment of the clinical case I brought at the start of this talk, Freud's old conception of psychoanalysis associated with bourgeoisie and the Victorian period does not hold up in our days. It is still alive, but in another ways. Nowadays, we apply its concepts and resources theoretically and clinically to complex and critical social situations. In this clinical methodology of psychoanalytic orientation, we seek to identify the intersections between race, class, and gender, age, and geopolitics of belonging, based on 3 dimensions. I don't know if it's this one. No, okay. In 3 dimensions: universal, particular, and singular. I equate the universal with that which seeks to be hegemonic and is violently and ideologically imposed. Particular, I associate with the collective and shared dimension of common experiences and meanings of specific groups, include white groups. Singular, to not exotic groups. Each group will have common thinkings and affections. Singular to that which escapes any standardization and is lived as an individual experience, more or less adhered to language and ideology. In the case I'm bringing you now, the demand came from what would be found to be an urban quilombo. A quilombo is a legally recognized territory occupied by a lineage of former slaves who preserve an ancestral cultural tradition of their people. But it is not an exotic place. It is an urban address in the city, in many cities in Brazil. We have 800 quilombos recognized nowadays in Brazil. And they live with us. We can pass through an quilombo without even seeing there is a quilombo, just like this. Here is the quilombo Souza with what I worked. The quilombola who reached out for aid for mental health was not the woman in need of psychological support, but her aunt. She was who was responsible for outreach, I think is that word, I'm not sure, in their community. Thus, the demand was formulated from the outset, from a collective mode of belonging. Not the clinical demand was not presented in the individualized way of neoliberal logic, okay? This woman suffered from substance abuse. I think it's the name also, okay? Thank you. Initially, her suffering was seen as a personal, individualized problem that interfered with the everyday life of the quilombo. But when we started to have psychoanalytical conversation in the quilombo, in their territory, in their houses, in their space, and about its living condition, its living conditions to make this preliminary diagnosis, we found that there were other manifestations of mental illness in the community, but diagnosed in a generic way through the psychiatrization of the individual experience. In Brazil, it's very strong, I don't know here. Bulimia, alcoholism, depression, anxiety. And everybody was taking many medicaments in that time. Here, some context is in order. At the time, the quilombo was considered a small favela. A favela is a slum, impoverished and criminal prejudice. They were seen with prejudice within a charming neighborhood of the city, which became upper middle class with lands valued by the process of gentrification. Their lands were purchased by the quilombo matriarch and her husband, a former slave from the last generation who obtained his freedom by law with the abolishment of slavery in 1888. 1888, yes. So the land was their land for sure. But 1 year before all of this distress and suffer, when we arrived 1 year before, they received an eviction order, legal, okay? it was carried out violently. Not someone came and in their home to say, sorry, here. No. There were five police cars with armed officers and blaring sirens approached the residents of the Colombo with brutality, ordering them to leave their homes. They were in a street without, is the end of a street. It's how can I, would you understand? Exactly, thank you. Since then, fear, anguish, and psychological suffering have emerged, of course, for several quilombolas. The drug use in Nice, for us, was just one index of this greater socio-political suffering from this political and racial violence act. They did not have the documents at that moment for this property in hand, nor did they even know their social trajectory. They didn't know what they were, that they were descendants of former slaves. So it was only when they sought the legal document of our ownership of the land that they retraced their own historical trajectory. It was also a path of a symbolic resignification of their social position. Through the method of psychoanalytic conversations that we get together monthly in collective meetings, they were able to symbolically transform their positions. They resignified, I can use this word, okay, the destitute position of Islam dwellers with a new name that was socially valued, quilombolas. We can say that this woman revealed with her symptoms the incidence of this new colonial violence. The quilombolas had been legally threatened with the loss of their own lands, being invaded by the policy to be evicted from their properties, and this violent incident of policy vehicles cornering the residents and trying to expel them from their homes updates, repeats, and freezes the colonial scene. The scene was a renewal of the Brazilian colonization, when original peoples, owners of their occupied lands, were threatened with being dispossessed of them. We call that the colonial situation in difference of the scene, the colonial scene. The colonial scene is in the past, the colonial situation is in the present, but there are symbolical connection between them. Until the psychoanalytic intervention, this incident and its resulting suffering were disconnected from their violent neocolonial and slave heritage. The quilombolas were disconnected from their individual, collective, social, and political trajectories, alienated from the way in which colonial history is repeated and imposed in my country by the colonizers in new ways, in nowadays. And this discovery allowed a political change in their status from Islam to Quilombo, but also an overcoming of the individual psychological suffering that gave rise to the clinical demand. So here you have many pictures of after all this one, they allowed me, now they are our partners in this project of psychoanalytical intervention. They help us to be with other Quilombos groups. And I think that if we had received the Mrs. case individually, even in a public mental health service, for instance, perhaps we could have missed this particular and universal dimension of their suffering. Perhaps would have referred her, this woman, to psychiatry, perhaps admitted her, and today she would be under medication. We would have had a hard time broadening her diagnosis and reaching the transformative effects achieved there. Psychoanalysis allows the identification of whiteness in the background of this case, showing how it can be used today to think about subjective and political transformation in an inseparable way. So, to conclude, here I think that we can have a kind of a mirror, white mirror that organize the scene, and we are alienated to that, but I will jump this part to go to the conclusion. Our conclusion, so is that modern, it's not a conclusion, it's an overture, in fact, I think, is that modern coloniality create an ideal of whiteness. This ideal sustains a kind of knowledge that reproduces a single point of view. It assumes that all others are non-rational, non-valuable, and non-visible. It maintains the concentration of power and capital in white hands, or supremacy hands, hegemonical hands, consequently establishing an unspoken and unconscious structure. This unconscious structure takes the form of an idealized mirror, but I will not explain everything about this, we can talk about that after, that organizes a system of hierarchies, and the closer we are to this ideal, the more we feel well with ourselves. Because whiteness maintains the concentration of wealth, it also becomes a regulator of social inequality. The unsustainable human situations it creates, such as poverty, in my country is very hard, the poverty, and exclusion, are attributed to individual incapacities and personal failures, which are defined in the system by the color of a person's skin. It is thus a system that feeds back on itself and keeps material and symbolic capital circulating in the same way for centuries. How can we transform this invented, racialized reality? This is a task for the future and for the present that you can take on yourselves. It is a possibility for transformation, both social and personal, that can create a better world for all of us to live in. And I will finish with James Baldwin words in the documentary, I'm Not Your Neighbor. Not everything you face can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So I hope I opened new perspectives of view, and I look forward answering, if I could understand the questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andrea. Okay, I want to open it up to questions and comments and discussion. And maybe one way of doing this, let's see how it goes, would be for people to intervene, say how they respond to this. Maybe we take 2 or 3 different contributions so that we make it more of a collective discussion, and then ask Andrea to participate in this discussion. So I'll ask you. And in a moment, yes, and after we've had a brief discussion, particularly about Andrea's paper, we'll be introducing another special guest that we have here this afternoon to take forward the discussion. But I wonder whether, first of all, people have a a thought about this, and while people are thinking, I have a question, which is, but why particularly is it psychoanalysis that is useful here? Because some people coming from different therapeutic traditions would say, well, the humanist or person-centered approach would be just as good as reaching in and connecting with people's authentic sense of experience, and the way that is not recognized by people and accepted. And there are different ways of acknowledging that experience and enabling people to discover who they are. What is it specifically about psychoanalysis that is important here?
Oh, I will try to speak in English, and if something get wrong, you really could fix it and correct me, okay? Correct me, okay?
There's some Brazilians in the room as well.
Yeah, we have
Also traduzir se quiser.
Bravo, I will try to speak in English. I think that are many reasons. I will speak about only two. Is a tradition. It's psychoanalysis is a very traditional theory in Brazil, but I think this is not the point most important. When we started to work with social and critical social situations in Brazil, especially when we entering the psychologists entering in the public services of social help. Social help is the name here, okay? Social support, maybe, or in the mental health. We saw that in critical, economical and critical conditions, there are some invisible camadas, levels, invisible levels of suffering that are connected, but not, they are not obviously, they are not evident. And with the first, I think the first point is the psychoanalysis, as we are searching for what is not there in the reach of the rational or of the positive view, positive in senses of that is present in our view. We started to find this kind of connections that without psychoanalysis maintained the situations. When we use psychoanalysis, we can touch. They are not in, they are invisible in the level of the language. They are not in the underground of the self. In the opposite, they are very, we can also see the political, the economical hegemonies. They are obviously, but the way of how they touch the subjective is not obvious. So with the first point is that with psychoanalysis, we can make this kind of interconnection. And with this, the persons themselves can change their symbolic and political positions, and for consequences, they change the subjective possessions of themselves. Is the first point in a political and subjective indissociable way. The second point is that usually psychoanalysis, even in Brazil, even with this with a great big presence in Brazil, psychoanalysis was associated to bourgeoisie, and inaccessible conditions of offer of the assistance. But in Brazil, we have the second point is we started also to work not only in the private consultations, not only in public services. We started to go where the people are. We have cantor, como eu falei?
Singer.
A singer, Milton Nascimento, you must know them, him, Milton Nascimento, reinvented a kind of rhythm in Brazil that is called the Clube da Esquina, Corn Club, a kind of this. He is wonderful, Milton Nascimento. He said, the singer must be where the people are. So we do the same with psychoanalysis. The psychoanalyst must be where people are. And we started to see that with the psychoanalysis in the squares, in the quilombos, in the streets, we offer the listener, we offer our services without payment. There are so many groups. I can send to Erica and to Ian the link, is in Portuguese, but you can translate, the link of the registration of 22 experiences of the psychoanalysis in the street. And we saw that with psychoanalysis, we could obtain a kind of sensitive, I don't know.
Sensitivity.
Sensitivity to recolher, to gather together. You are Brazilian? To gather the experience that were not presented, because these people that we touch with psychoanalysis in the streets are the people that carry with them the reality that reproduces the inequality. And as we use psychoanalysis to hear this kind of inequality and this kind of experiences, we could make these experiences more visible. We could make them more visible. And without this toolbox, this keys of psychoanalysis, I think that it was very difficult, because you will stay in a comprehensive and a kind of a social ad. You can victimize the people, you can reproduce, even if you have a good intentions, even if you have good intentions, with a position so comprehensive, you can repeat what is there. You can, even if you don't want to do this, you can reproduce the power system. All of these 2 points to start.
Yeah, thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you very much, and thanks also for the effort of presenting in English. Everything was very clear. So I know nothing about psychoanalysis. My background is in development studies, Latin American studies. So yeah, I'm finding this fascinating. I really like the way that from the individual experience, you go to the macro level and what I would call kind of the structural level. So it's really wonderful work. I'm just curious about, so my idea of psychoanalysis is the bourgeois one that you mentioned. Yeah, that's my association.
Okay.
So I find the work that you do, it's very progressive, right? It's about social change and challenging inequalities. I was just wondering how common is this? So what's kind of the scale of the movement? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one question. The second one is my other association with psychoanalysis is that it's all in your head. It's all only about, you know, what you mentioned, the words and what goes on in your head, your dreams. But we have bodies, right? So and at some point, and also the way that you presented, I got the sense that there is also something that's more of an embodied thing that you do, but you didn't really elaborate on that. So I was just curious about where does the body come in?
Okay. For
Do
the,
you want to answer this now, or
Oh.
is there someone else who'd like to kind of like take
I
that
can take
further
notes, so
and help Andrea to
to
think
not forget.
before she answers?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's taking it further.
Well, try it. Let's see how it goes.
Do you want to write that down?
Only a minute?
I'll have her write down.
Oh, right, okay. Okay.
It's gonna be too much to
I've been
remember.
thinking. Okay.
Okay.
I wanted to ask how, when you're working with the idea of whiteness in community, firstly, how are you received as an individual? And I know that you identify as white because I already asked you. So I'm not making an assumption, but yeah, how is that received by the community and how do you work with your own whiteness when you're working with other people? Perfect.
Okay, so we mustn't lose that question, but we could start way.
Okay. For the first question, what is your name?
Tanya.
Tanya. In Brazil, we have this name also, Tanya.
lots of
It's very easy to say, you help me, Tanya. Really, I think Deborah will say the same. This position in the field of psychoanalysis is an ascendant position, but not traditional and majority position, I can say that. But in Latin America, especially in Brazil, I can tell you more about my country, but we can say that in Latin America, the psychoanalysis is really changing. It's really changing, but it's a great movement, a big movement that are taking form step by step, not only with the younger psychoanalysts, but especially with them, because we have social change, we have gendering change, we have new discussions in relation to race, class more or less, but race and gender, and also this impacts the discussion of class in a geopolitical perspective that in Brazil is structured by the feminist and racial struggles, social struggles.
Yes.
We have today in Brazil, the universities in Brazil today have 50% of quotas, social quotas, that includes racial quotas. And we have many advances of these struggles in terms of the law, protections for women, many new laws. So we have changes, social changes that touches all the fields of knowledge. And in relation to psychoanalysis, especially in relation to psychoanalysis, we are in the university. All the universities in Brazil have professors and teachers of psychoanalysis from north to south, as I said. And in the schools of psychoanalysis, you have the tradition to have schools of psychoanalysis in England also. We know that psychoanalysis is transmitted most in the schools in relation to universities, less in universities and more in the schools. In Brazil, we have psychoanalysis in the universities and in the schools of psychoanalysis. So in the university, we needed to be attentive to the social chains. I can say that the schools are more conservative in relation to the traditional lectures. And in the universities and out of the universities and out of the schools, in the streets, they are the more radicals. The more radical changes are there. So we have this kind of, in Brazil, we said, disputa de narrativas, narratives dispute. You use here this word or not? Narratives dispute. It's very common in Brazil. We are in conflict. We submit. We will change.
When you say schools, what do you
Schools
mean?
of psychoanalysis are the
Training
institutions.
institutes.
Okay.
The training institutes, thank you, exactly. They're more conservative, yes. In the university, less, and in the street, the radical. Okay, so we are changing. It's not an established field these days. The second point, we are trying to. I am here with Erica Berman. Thank you very much. I would like to start thanking Erica, but I was very nervous, so I will do now. I want to, in a public way, thank you, Erica, of receiving me in Manchester University, because we are trying to make this kind. I think Deborah, Erica, Ilana, and many of psychoanalysts in the world, not only in Latin America or us. We are trying to do this kind of association that, what you asked about? What you asked about? The how to think, how to interview in a clinical practice, not thinking that the unconscious is something inside us, but is as the unconscious is structured like a language. If the language structures the word and structures and receive the impact of the economical structures, the social bounds, is obviously that the unconscious participates receives the impact of the word, of the world, of the symbolic positions. So we can see in Freud, we can get tools to make this happens in a clinical and a theoretical ways. And I will only take one point to answer you. We can say that we are named. You can understand this word. We are named by the others and by ourselves. So if I say I am Andrea, I'm a white woman, I'm white and I'm a Brazilian white professor of psychoanalysis woman. This is as I am saying about myself. One level. Second level. Tanya, you will say, oh, I knew Andrea, she's a, Andrea, I think you are, for example, a critical psychoanalyst. Okay, I agree with you. The second level, we can dialogue. About who I am. But in the third level, it's somebody that, it's not somebody, it's a structure that determines who we are. So in Brazil, as I am a white woman, I am in a privileged condition. I will profit this to answer Faith. And in this level, it's very difficult to touch this level for everybody. An adolescent, I work a lot with adolescents in law situations, in irregular law situations.
Illegal.
How can I say that?
Illegal
Situations. And an adolescent told me that. I live as I have, what is the name? Um alvo.
A target.
A target. he is a black adolescent, a black and poor and man adolescent that lives in the favelas in Brazil. This kind of adolescent, we have in each 23 minutes, one adolescent that is poor black and man is killed in each 23 minutes. So now, as maybe 5 adolescents were killed in Brazil when we were here, when we are here, we were here, yes, in this moment. So he told me, I live as I has a target. Everybody looks at me and see a violent person, something just like this. So I said to him, take off the shirt. And he said, it's not me that puts it in myself. So this third level is the level that we want to touch now. And we want to explain how we could do that. So it was because of that I take this example of the Quilombo. So we are trying to explain that. It's not, não está pronto ainda.
It's not ready.
It's not ready yet, okay? But on answering Faye, we work in this project. I am a white psychoanalyst. We have a group of black women psychoanalysts together. I am not the only white, but there are more black women psychoanalysts than white women psychoanalysts. And we work all the time together because we know that a white body in occupying the position of the psychology, not only psychoanalyst, will close some doors, will interdict, prohibit some kind of expressions. And how do you know that? Because we have experiences of black women, black men, black psychoanalysts in training that suffered prejudices from their own psychologists and psychoanalysts experience, in their experiences. They told us, this group, it's called Psychoanalytical Occupation. It's a group that works in the streets, in the quilombos, etc.
Or like Occupy Psychoanalysis.
Thank you. Occupy Psychoanalysis, yes. And when I was in this quilombo, I was with 3 colleagues. All of them were black women psychoanalysts. I was the only one white woman. And I was received, I wrote a book that is called o sujeito suposto suspeito. How can I say that?
No, supposed to be a husband.
Yeah.
I changed the Lacan's expression because they don't make confiance. How can I say that? There is no confiance.
Trust.
They don't trust. I was received just like this. Oh, we know that psychologists are all the same. They do wrong things with us. We are not good with them. And after they went out and we be worse than we were before. I was received just like we were received just like this. They don't trust in psychologists. They had bad experiences in the public services. So the first step was show that we were not just like the racist and the prejudice psychologists. with than they were in contact before. And for me, this is the first step, even in my private consultations, because I think that really nowadays it's so difficult for trans, for Black people, for poor people to be accepted as they are. The whiteness is inside all of us, and it's so difficult to struggle with that. We are always making erros, mistakes. We do pay attention. We have to pay attention with that. So we were very received in a very bad way, but after all, the transfer, the trust, we could bring trust to make 1 year, 18 months of psychoanalytical, individual and collective interventions.
Okay, thanks. Now then, I want to open things up even further. We have another guest here that is really lovely to have into the discussion. Ilana Munchian, trained as a psychoanalyst and practices as a psychoanalyst. She's currently a lecturer in the University of West of England. She's done research on the intersections between race, LGBT politics and gender for many years, and she has a book which is just released now. Would you like to bring a chair to the front?
Please.
Bring Ilana to the front to participate in the discussion. Ilana's book is called Mental Health and Otherness: Intersections between Gender, Race, Class and Age. And Ilana has been one of the significant new generation of psychoanalysts in Brazil who've been taking part in this wave of progressive work that Andrea has been discussing. So we've asked Ilana to contribute to the discussion and perhaps say a little bit about the book as she goes along. You want to? Okay.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you. Well, I have to say that I was thinking about some questions to ask you, because of course I think our work meets in so many levels. But you answered most of it, so now perhaps we could open a bit more the debate. I have to say from Jan's introduction that yes, I'm a psychoanalyst, I'm a lecturer, and I've done my doctorate here with Erica Dormer and Ian, and I'm part of the discussion, so most also of my influence and inspirations also come from them. So I think as you were talking, I was thinking of how we have our work meets in so many levels, but I can also see the differences in the epistemological perspectives, which I find very good. We can actually open the debate, thinking on that. I was thinking, as we started, I think it's a challenge for us that work with critical issues and thinking about the issues on gender, race, and class, how to avoid essentializing the other, even in our own crowd. The other can be the same as us, sex. But I think this is a continuous challenge, and I was thinking if we can debate a bit more on this. And every time I think about this challenge of not essentializing the other, fetishizing the other, I think on the work of feminist and anti-racist theorists, thinking on the work of reflexivity. So one thing I find particularly important is this, that I always say it's a continuous exercise. There's not one answer only, but in our practice, how we can continue exercise our own reflexivity in order to avoid reproducing the other, even a good order. Because I think it's for psychoanalysis is particularly important and challenging. So I would like if you could talk a bit more. Then I think in the same direction, like I'm going to talk a bit about the book.
Please.
Just how, well, the book launch is going to be in a month online. I will send to you and Erica the details so we can have it. And I look forward to your questions but the idea here, like I've done lots of research on drug use and gender and class and race and immigration, gender and class and sexuality, particularly in Brazil, looking at older trans women in Brazil. And I was seeing how, okay, I've seen many things, but here what I've tried to do, although these areas, they seem different, they meet in some ways that I saw it as the production of the other, the one that's different than us. And I was looking at this regarding the mental health classifications, how these groups are seen by the side disciplines. And then we can see many things. So we can think about how women were associated with hysteria from the beginning, and we can even think about how homosexuality and transsexuality are seen as a mental illness now. So, and at the same time, we see the over pathologization of specific groups when we talk about immigration. So I was very much interested in this. And this is what I discuss here as well. Towards the end of this work, and of course, I think this part of our own reflections, I'm always thinking about how psychoanalysis can keep this space for emancipation, for empowerment, for knowledge, say, open, because it can be closed. Psychoanalysis can also reproduce and psychoanalytic practice. So how can we keep it open? So this is another question for you. But I think that because I think it's part of the challenge, isn't it? It's what it's guiding us. Like how can we keep it open? How can we keep this listening to the other? Interesting. What I say here, it's like this listening that allows the subject to emerge. And then just to finish, as you were talking about the psychoanalytic experience in Brazil, I was thinking about the pandemics. I was in Brazil at the time, during the pandemics, and there were lots of psychoanalytic work being done in that very difficult situation. But Brazil was particularly hit by the pandemics. It took a long time for the vaccines to arrive, so it was, I think there were 700,000 people. It was really tough. And there were lots of psychoanalytic interventions happening. I participated in many of them, actually, from online. But I thought of one as we were talking, maybe you have participated in this one as well, I don't know. It's one that we collected, dreams.
Yes,
Yeah, that was interesting because it was a collective work.
Yes.
So we could see like many similarities among the dreams we've collected and the way that they were interpreting the dreams, and I think answering your questions as well. They were individual but very social, very also politically and historically located. Because they were talking about what was happening. So though the dreams are, of course, individual, we could see this work, so yeah.
Do you want someone else to come in if you like, or you answer if other people have things to say? We want to hear other people here as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not sure how it works in Brazil, but over here, you're probably aware, the licensing boards, this ominous HCPC, they license, so they look over all psychologists, psychoanalysts, analysts, sorry, as a kind of,
Health professions council regulators.
Okay.
sorry,
Thank you.
and so
Thank you to
they,
understand what it is.
and I'll slow down, sorry, and they kind of regulate and control how we operate. So one of the things I heard that I really admire and I love, and I can even imagine the picture, you talked about the singer goes where the people are, and the psychoanalysts go where the people are, and the counseling psychologist should go where the people are. However, if we did that, what you just said, we would all lose our license immediately. Because you have no confidentiality forms, you have no space, you're talking to people
But
in
even
open
as a
spaces.
psychoanalyst,
As a psychoanalyst, I don't know, but what I'm seeing that you're doing as a
It's
psychoanalyst,
an interdiction.
you're introducing social change, and as counseling psychologists, we're being trained to introduce social change. So I think we're two of the same people doing things in different ways to produce the same results. So what my main question is, over there, over here, how do you rise above these licensing boards that are created by the colonialism and the whiteness that you talked about, that are there to control us, not only about what we do, but what we may have done 50 years ago that they don't like, or 20, oh, you had this on your record, you can't do it. Doesn't matter what good work you're doing. How do you rise above that?
I have an idea. Research, because if you are making a research, you will be protected. And you can make change allowed by the people, by the law, by the universe, and you can have financial support also.
I mean,
We don't
research
have-
as an intervention.
Yeah, exactly. We use a lot in Brazil, pesquisação,
Action research.
action research. So I think it's a creative way to try. You can be in the university with the politics. You can make contracts between you and experience, fazer experiências juntos de pesquisa.
To do collective experience.
Experiences. And it will be authorized.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we
Yeah,
asked
that's
some other people here might tell us whether that'll work or
Please.
No.
not.
No.
Sorry?
Yeah, so you have to get.
You don't get
Approval.
So even to do the research,
Yes.
even to do the research,
Yes.
usually, and I don't know, I've not seen the ethics committee, but
Oh, you're lucky.
I'm gonna guess that overwhelmingly white people, and they're also, as you said, very conservative people that we don't want any trouble here. So they won't, if you do any risky research, that's going to get too much attention, no ethical approval. So then you'll have to be radical, let go of your license, do the research by yourself, but then in that you lose your respect because you're not licensed.
What is your name?
Sunny.
Sunny. Sunny, I think it is difficult for all of us. In Brazil, the anthropologists simply they organized themselves and they don't approve the committee of ethics in their research field. So the things could go on. They changed the PowerPoint of the legitimizing of the research in their field. They said, we don't recognize you if you don't change your rules. And so now we have a new law that authorizes not even the anthropologists, but the psychologists, the psychoanalysts, the social and human scientific fields that could do research without all of the traditional documents. For example, I can go this last research. This experience is also a research. We are together with the Quilombolas now. They are our partners. And we can only, for example, take the word of them. Do you authorize this research? They can only say yes. We even do, it is not even necessary to have the paper signed by them because of the anthropologists that made the struggle, it's a struggle, the name, a scientific struggle against the ethical committees of ethics. So I encourage, how can I say that?
To change the rules.
So this is about producing alternative networks and alternative institutions, is it?
Can I just say about the ethics? So the ethics committees are in interdisciplinary, and we can get on the ethics committees. So it's, you know, the more people you have on the ethics committees, I served on one for a period of time. The more people you have in the ethics committee to do this kind of research, the more likely it is that then, you know, the ethics committees will approve.
And son, Ilana is in one.
Ilana is in the.
Present to the ethics committees of Ilana.
In action research actually, so I am struggling with the ethics as well.
Yes,
I am doing something creative and I'm really struggling.
Actually, this is such a huge area.
I'm doing a role-playing game and I'm really restricting my content to try not to be triggering.
Oh, no.
But it's hard because it's a type of exposure therapy and the key point is to trigger in a safe distance. And I can't have a therapeutic effect without triggering.
I can see that. As
Yeah, I think even we can pass ethics by telling lie, by being unethical to ethics, we can pass it as I did it. And I struggled with them 9 months that I could really study about my thesis. But anyway, I think we can pass ethics. But the issue is that, okay, imagine that we pass ethics and we have enough resources. And we are going to communities and try to analyze them as a psychoanalyst. So there is no political, how can I put it? There is no political program in psychoanalysis. There is no revolutionary understanding of politics in psychoanalysis, because at the end, it is all about your unconscious. It is all about individual parts. Yes, we pay attention to social and political and economic, but at last there is no program in psychoanalysis. So imagine we analyzed all the people. So what's the point? What would happen at the end? Nothing. Just we are people. For example, me as a person who has been, worked with a psychoanalyst from when I was 18 years old till now. So I know myself. I have some understanding, and I have some understanding with my clients. But there is no revolutionary point. There is no political emancipatory vision. So I think what's the point of going to communities with this lens of psychoanalysis?
Yes, in Brazil, we have both movements. We have many groups around our country that struggles in the social and political ways. For instance, in this project, Occupy Psychoanalysis, we are in 4 states. And in Rio de Janeiro, we have a very political experience. You know that in Rio de Janeiro, in the favelas, the adolescents are killed by especially by the police, by the police, by the cops, by the state of our state. So what we are doing there, we obtained support from the juridical defense system. We are with 100 mothers that had lost their sons. They receive a financial support to make the political struggle against the state of Brazil because of the psychoanalysts that listen to them, understood that without being with them in a political way, nothing would change. So now these psychoanalysts are with the juridical defense, with the social media, the mass media, television and social media, and with social support, and the clinics, the psychoanalytical clinics. It's not listen to the mothers in a private way, but go with them in the Câmara dos Deputados.
Chamber of Deputies.
In the deputy, where are the deputies in the
The
federal?
local parliament.
The local parliament, they are with them in the TVs, in the social media, in the mass media, and they are recognized by the state of Brazil as legitimate, eles foram legitimados como grupo. Yes, they are together. So I think that the psychoanalysis changed. It's not more. You can have a private consultation, okay, but the most important thing now for us in Brazil, for this group or this movement, I think we are a movement more than a group. This movement is to change the field of psychoanalysis itself. So it exists, but it's in movement. We cannot say this is psychoanalysis. It is not true, but it's also psychoanalysis, and this is true.
But I think there is a very important point that you are making, that yes, psychoanalysis, like the theory itself, might not carry this political perspective. But yes, this is also, I think, isn't that then a space to reflect on? So what are the directions of psychoanalysis today? I think you are bringing good examples of where, and I see there are lots of actually debates in Brazil, because there is no a unique political direction in psychoanalytic groups, and so
You are reason, yeah, you both, because in a theoretical way, if you,
but there is
I can say that we look for, we will find tools, but it's not
yes, and
done.
and at the same time,
You are
yes,
right.
and the debate is huge, isn't it? I have even written about like the politics in psychoanalysis and not psychoanalysis. At the same time, that we don't find this straight political direction a unique one. We also find tools that can be very political. So I'm thinking about desire,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Perfect.
As
Exactly.
you know, a political tool for
Mhm.
change. So,
How does that work?
for example, there are many, like, I'm thinking about the work of Spirit. Actually, now, what does the subject desire, which is a power in itself, and when we look at the work of politics, many times we get caught into very straightforward answers, so everything can become very reduced into, let's say, a financial issue or economic issue or status issue, while when we look at desire
Mhm.
as this political tool, we can open a very powerful space. And I think also a space for change. One thing that I'm thinking a lot, I want to ask you, anyway, you can answer all my questions, but it's like, I believe it is the way of the encounter between us and them, that we can change, we can learn. I think while we can also reproduce the same things, we can also change because we've learned. And when we bring desire into the equation, we can open up a much wider field for change, for social change, for, I don't know, insights, emancipation, autonomy, agency, I don't know.
Okay, so maybe a way of winding this bit of the afternoon up would be for Andrea to answer your questions.
Yeah, that would be, let's take notes.
I thought in phase, another phase, okay? Oh, I don't know if I understand. Você quer que eu responda isso que você falou, né? O desejo, de como fazer
Desejo como
E do
manter a
identitário.
psicanálise aberta, como evitar a essencialização.
Yes. I will use an example because I think we have no more big time. I told about this case to Ian and Erica. I will, I want only before answer also Ian for the welcome. How can I say? Welcome. Thank you, Ian, also. We had a case in this intervention. This woman was called, this Nisi, was diagnosed as schizophrenic woman. And why? I listened to her. She was not a schizophrenic person, but I think that sometimes when we look, want to simplify the answer, when we look to a poor, in this case, a poor Black woman without many studies, she didn't go to the school until the university. She was a very simple, sympathetic, nice person, but not ready, person. Thank you, yes. And the psychiatry looked at her, I think, with all of his prejudice, and he saw a woman that could not have a rational position. And he was diagnosed as a schizophrenic woman. Sorry. And she told us, this is how they look at us. My uncle, my grandmother, the sister of my grandmother, my uncle, my grandmother, and the sister of my grandmother were all of us were diagnosed as schizophrenic. And this was very important for us because we do the supervising, not only with the psychoanalysts. We made plurivision, not only supervision. In the plurivision, we invite persons from the original knowledge, from this popular knowledge, to discuss the cases, because they are other point of views. And kind of a priest of an African original religion, a religion from the historical movement in Brazil, he told us that for them, persons could even listen to voices, and this could be manifestations of the religion's points of view. She told us that white people usually take them as they were irrational people. The psychiatry, in a classical way, the psychologists and psychiatrists could not see them with their culture. So to explain that, if you essentialize somebody, we could repeat the violence.
Yes.
And I think you touch the point. With psychoanalysis, we are always open to this. We must work
But
from
how can you keep it involved?
Maybe that's a good question
Yeah.
that we can pick up in the next session, because we're just running over 4 o'clock now. I think that closes the first part of the afternoon. We're going to have a little break, and then we're going to come back, and Deborah is going to talk about her book and her work, which I think will intersect these questions in a different way and answer this kind of questions. So I'd like to thank Andrea and Ilana for this afternoon. We will come back at 4:15.
For those of you who can't stay.
For those of you who can stay, and I think maybe some people will come.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We have some coffee here, no?
See what we have.
Super compreensivo.
Well done.
Sim.
Very nice.
It was possible to understand. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Madrid. Going to be.
You're going to Bristol.
The best help.
No, there is almost two event. But like that.
Yes.
And then
Yes,
tomorrow
thank
it's
you.
7 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
But it's a small
I would just check some games. Again, it's a mistake, Brenton, so you're expecting to be around.
Yeah, so.
Oh, yes.
That's some coffee.
Yeah.
But I have you have covered that.
Take the placement over.
Because it's there, because I don't it's possible to understand. We got those. Oh.
So.
Vamos aí, eu quero estar no corredor. Ok.
And these are medium, and these are gluten free. Okay, right. Open roads.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is, this is, sort of.
Has venido desde España. España, donde estoy. Desde Argentina. Sí, hasta aquí. No, pero os vas a quedar aquí un poco. Para España. ¿Para España dónde? Sí. ¿Hasta qué día te quedas ahí? Desde mañana hasta el 12. Pero no está en eso. ¿Tenéis dónde quedar? En lo de Nora Leavington, no sé si la conoces. No. Vamos a poner ahí vamos a pegar agua. El agua, we are going to take the water. And what is that?
I'll just have it's where is it? It's
Just go straight,
right, straight on.
straight and it's on the left. I think so.
So this, tem que levar água quente.
Tem que pegar água quente.
No, you're okay.
Vamos.
Why not? I don't know, everyone.
You know everyone and you know everything.
I do not know everything.
It feels like you know everything.
I definitely don't. And just, this is my area, so if I'm interested in it. But I definitely don't know everything.
But you know the speaker.
She put, she asked if anyone wanted to meet in their email, Erica sent it.
And
So I met her. So that's the only reason why.
interesting.
I actually saw this book the other day and I was like, it's like £50.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. It was a lot.
Oh,
I know, I really want to know what was in it. Last year, so I'm like, okay.
so you bought it?
No, I didn't buy it, it's not my book. I mean, I saw it the other day and I wanted to read it, but,
You know you can.
use the library.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I do use the library for.
You can request via our.
I know.
So this.
They're really supportive.
Não, eu vou
Yeah.
bastante.
Yeah, I requested too.
Bastante, né? Vou
But
passar
it's
essa
not-
semana.
I only have them in that, so. Yes.
Yeah, it's because like
I request.
but my new request is like entirely not available, so they literally just purchase.
Eu parei, mas aí.
Deu uma vontade.
Foi. Café que chama esse.
Can you write a note in the chat saying, you know. Well, no. Yeah, that. Thank you.
Hello.
He wasn't looking, so much.
This camera wasn't working, so that's why Dre brought the course laptop.
Okay,
Yeah.
recording has been stopped, is that on purpose? Yes.
Yes.
to return these students.
Or maybe it hasn't
Oh, I see, it's pause.
already paused, that's good, isn't that right?